I would understand that mental health impacts my body. So it's not just something that I can control in my thinking, but it impacts my body. It'd be like saying to someone who had a heart attack, stop having a heart attack, if you said stop being anxious. I've had to learn that, and I wish I'd known that at the start. It would have made it an easier path to walk. When I look back in hindsight now, I realise that ever since I was just a little kid, and we're talking pre-10 years old, that there was some significant problems with my mental health, but I had no idea about that. When it became obvious was closer to when I was in my 40s, and so it would be when it always manifests to start with for me when I would get separated from my kids. But I knew, and my wife Deb knew as well, I knew that it was a bit more than just a dad that really loved his kids. It just felt like it was borderline not healthy, and yet it was always manageable. When it really sort of burst onto the scene and I couldn't ignore it was right at the start of 2012, and Deb's dad had passed away very suddenly and tragically in Canada, and so went to Canada with the family, and then I was coming back by myself, and it was to lead a mission trip from church and to do some other things, and Deb and the kids were going to follow a few weeks later. And that night, flying from LA to Sydney, I was on a crowded 747, and if you were sitting beside me you wouldn't have known, but it was the most horrific experience of my life, that sense of anxiety and wondering what was going to happen to me. 1 minute I'd have the sweats, I'd be really, really hot. A few minutes later I'd have the chills and I'd be freezing cold, and I couldn't sleep, I couldn't rest, my body was really agitated. People have asked me, what were you worried? Were you worried about flying? And I'm going, no, I've flown more than I can ever remember, that doesn't worry me. Were you worried that something would happen to your kids? No, I wasn't worried about that. You know, I actually found it really hard to know what was troubling me. What I knew was that internally in my head, I felt like I was going to go crazy. I was terrified, thinking, what's going to happen? Am I going to end up rolling around the floor of the aircraft and they've got to restrain me or something? I just didn't know what was going to happen. I felt really sick. So it was the worst experience of my life, bar none. And so after that happened, you know, I knew then that this was a warning sign to me. It was not something that I could ignore. And some of the things that crossed my mind then is, what does this mean? Because, you know, for me, and I know it probably sounds really arrogant to say it, but I'm thinking Geoff Shepherd does not struggle with mental health. Geoff Shepherd does not have a weakness like this. And to me there was an absolute sense of shame to it. I felt totally ashamed and weak and 100% broken. I arranged to see a psychologist, and I saw him really as soon as I could after I was back in Australia. And in there as well I went to the doctor, and you know, he's fantastic, and I arranged, when I rung up and got the appointment, I said, can I get a longer appointment than just 10 minutes? I need to be able to explain this. I said, I'll pay extra, but I need to be able to explain the situation. And I mean, I'm going to say it, but I went on to medication, and I was on medication for a couple of years, and you know, that was probably the second or third hardest part of this whole journey for me, with feeling like, so I have to go on medication for anxiety, and for a long time I couldn't even talk about that to anyone. I couldn't even admit it to anyone. And right at the moment, like here we are, it's years down the track, and I'm saying that now. It's hard for me to say it now, but I know that I needed that medication, and apart from that too, just an awesome group of friends. The friends that I've got around me to support me through this, you couldn't equal them. And then I also had some specific prayer ministry, so some people nearby where I live that really specialise in prayer ministry. So that's been an ongoing thing for me as well. So I've tried to do all of those things. Look, my theory is that people really do mean well, but some of the things that I've found really difficult is if people have tried to manage me or tried to tell me what would be helpful to me and what wouldn't be, that hasn't been helpful to me. I've needed all along to be able to make those decisions for myself. And if I felt like I couldn't make a decision, then it's been much more important for me to actually ask for help in making that decision rather than have someone presume and try and make the decision for me. And I think the other thing too that we tend to do with people when they're struggling, we tend to give pat answers, you know. So it'll be things like, you know, someone will say with the best of intention, hey, just keep your eyes on Jesus, Geoff. Just keep your eyes on Jesus, you know. And I'm like, internally I'm thinking, well, I know that. You know, like, you need to tell me that? The people that have helped me the best are those that have just turned up day in, day out and cheered me on. And especially in my case, they just gradually and gently pointed me to Jesus. Mental health is not just a mental or a physical or a human journey, it's a spiritual journey as well. And so for me, faith in Jesus was not just a part of this, but it was central to it. There's not 1 milligram of pride in what I'm saying, because I've been so broken through this whole experience. But the other thing is that I know God has made me strong, and to the point where I know that at this stage in my life, I'm stronger than I've ever been, ever. And the other thing is that it's not over yet. There's much more coming. So God has done an incredible work for me in changing me and helping me and healing me. And yet I know there's still a long way to go. But like, I'm resoundingly, unchangeably confident in what's coming, and that is that bit by bit, God's bringing his healing, and so it's going to get better and better day by day, and I'm really enjoying it.